What is up, everybody? Mr. Bumbleflower here, and today I got something a little special for y'all. I've been cooking up something pretty nice, I think, and basically it's my version of Miss Bumbleflower. Took out a lot of the fluff, added in a lot more Wincons, and some more spicy combos, some expensive combos. But basically, what I think I've cooked up here, and well, I kind of know because I've been playing this deck ever since Miss Bumbleflower came out. But basically, what I've created here is Group Hug That Wins. Instead of just doing, the TSM special, sitting around, do nothing, and lose, we're actually going to start winning with our Group Hug decks. I love Group Hug. It's my main go-to. Back when Quain was the only Group Hug deck, that was my first deck. My first ever Magic deck was Quain. And ever since then, I think Miss Bumbleflower is just a strict upgrade to Mr. Quain. And I'm pretty excited to get into it and show you guys what I've come up with, and hopefully give you guys ideas for your future decks as well. Getting right into it, we're just gonna get the generic fluff out of the way. Starting with our mana, we got Arcane Signet, of course. Thought Vessel gives us a no maximum hand size. We're going to be drawing a lot. We got Soul Ring, and then we got Boardwipes, Supreme Verdict, destroy all creatures, can't be countered. Starfall Invocations, the new board wipe. You gift a card and you get to keep one of your guys. So that's really nice. We got Season of the Gathering. Basically, we're going to just use this to board wipe artifacts or enchantments if they get out of hand. You can also add some more plus ones and draw some more if you ever feel the need. And then we got Farewell. I believe that's our last board wipe. Pretty generic. Destroys everything you need it to destroy. Then we got our Counterspells. Not too Counterspell heavy. We got Negate. We got Counterspell, of course, and then we got the Bloomburrow Counterspell, which you gift a card and you can just counter target spell. Then we got Tutors. We're going to be tutoring for our combo pieces quite a bit, but we've only got 3 tutors in the whole deck. We got Mystical Tutor. Basically, what that's going to be tutoring for is one of our main Sun combos. Narset Reversal, you can, if you have one of these in your hand, you can toot the other, or you can toot Enter the Infinite and try to win that way. Idyllic Tutor is mainly going to be searching for one enchantment, which is Mind Over the Matter. This is going to be one of our bread and butter go-to Wincons, and that's basically all we're going to be tooting for with Idyllic Tutor. Then we got Worldly Tutor. We have a plethora of creatures in here that are very strong. We can tutor for them. We also have creatures in our combos that we can tutor for. So Worldly Tutor just brings those straight to the top, and that's pretty nice. And next up we got Killspells. Those are just Path to Exile, Sword to Plowshares, and we have Wear Down in here to take care of some artifacts and enchantments. And then lastly, for the generic fluff, we just got Swiftfoot Boots to protect our commander or our big buffy boys. And then we got Innkeeper's Talent that gives us more plus ones and gives our permanents a ward, so they're more difficult to get rid of. Or it can double our counters, which is also nice. And then we got Wizard Class, which having no maximum hand size for 1 blue mana is really good. And then just drawing more and adding more counters is also good and synergizes with our girl Miss Bumbleflower very well. Alright, next up is our Mana Dorks. We just have some pretty basic. We need a few Mana Dorks that generate blue mana. First one we got is Bloom Tender. It can add 1 mana of any color of your permanents. We got Noble Hierarchy. It can add a white green or a blue. And then we have Feyburrow Elder. It does the same thing as Bloom Turned Over, but it also gets +1/+1 for each color among your permanents. So it can potentially be a 3/3. So that's nice. We also got some basic Farseeks. We got a Claim Jumper in here for that catch-up mechanic. I've always enjoyed Claim Jumper. It also adds to the rabbit flavor, the rabbit spice. I love rabbits, so I try to add as many rabbits to any deck that I can. Then we got Kami of Whisper Hopes. Really good card. You can buff this guy up with Miss Bumbleflower's ability and get a lot of mana eventually. It also adds blue, so that can help us out with our combos as well. And then we got Rishkar, same thing as Kami, but it just adds green. Or it gives, no, it's not the same thing. Each creature you control with a counter on it has add a green. And then you get an additional counter when it enters. And then Gear Sage, that's the one that does the same thing as Kami. It adds a green for each +1/+1 counter on Gear Sage. It also has the evolve mechanic with it, which is nice. Next up is our card draw. I mean, we could rely just solely on Miss Bumbleflower for a card draw, but I think that'd be pretty rude of us. So we have some support for her. Esper Sentinel. If you buff Esper Sentinel with Miss Bumbleflower, it can get out of hand pretty quickly. You can draw 3-4 cards a turn sometimes. Every time an opponent casts a non-creature, that's pretty crazy. And then we got Fairy Mastermind. We're going to be causing our opponents to draw extra cards, so we might as well draw extra cards on top of them. We have Concentrated Sphinx. Whenever our opponents draw cards, we draw 2. Always good. Temple Bell. It just taps and everybody draws a card. A really good card. We also have Teferi's Puzzle Box. This card, I love this card. It makes games get out of hand pretty quickly. It turns games into very hectic, crazy cards, sometimes crazy hands, and it cycles everyone's hand every turn. I really love this card. It's one of my favorite cards in Magic because it keeps the games fresh sometimes. And then lastly, we have Queen. Each player draws a card. We're going to be comboing off with Queen and Temple Bell later. I'll go into that. But yeah. And then we have Kutzil. We're not going to be using him much for draw because it's going to be rare that we're going to be attacking with more than one creature. But if we do, it gives us extra draw. We're mainly going to be using Kutzil for your opponents can't cast spells during your turn effect, which we'll get into a little later. And then we have Socrates. Socrates is kind of like a big pillow. He can take an attack, and when he does, he can absorb that attack and everyone draws a cards equal to that creature's power, which is pretty cool. Rounded down. I really enjoy Socrates. It also adds to that pillow for group huggy effect that everybody knows and loves with group hug. And then we got Danny Pink. This guy is pretty crazy. Whenever one or more counters are put on this creature for the first time each turn, draw a card, and that goes to every creature. So every time you buff a creature with Miss Bumbleflower, you draw an extra card. Pretty nutty, pretty insane synergy there. And then last but not least, we have Windfall. Just cycles everybody's hands once. But we also have a pretty nutty combo as well that goes with Windfall, and keep that in mind whenever you're playing it. It's really good to just cycle your hand if you have a trash hand, but we're mainly going to be using this in a pretty dirty combo later on. Alright, next up is creatures. We have Ms. Bumbleflower buffs creatures pretty well, so we have a bunch of creatures to buff. First one we got is Body of Knowledge. It gives you no maximum hand size, and then whenever it's dealt damage, you draw a bunch of cards. And then the more cards you have, the stronger it is, but you can also buff it with Miss Bumbleflower and keep it alive a little bit longer. It's a pretty good card. Next up, we got Esper Sentinel. We already went over him, but basically, the more times you buff him, the more cards you draw each time an opponent casts a non-creature spell. Then we have 20-Toed Toad. He's one of our Wincons, but usually he's going to get removed before you hit 20 counters on this guy, but I don't know. Sometimes people forget about him and you can just win the game with him. And every time you give him a buff and you attack, you put a +1 and draw a card. So he also gives you a maximum hands of 20. So like there's really no downside of running this little guy. He's got some play in him, and usually he draws spot removal so that you can play your combos later on. Next up, we got Kami. The more you buff him, the more mana you get. Pretty simple with that guy. And then we got Gear Sage. More you buff her, more mana as well. And then you got Glunch. I like buffing Glunch because I like making him more difficult to kill. I mean, he's already a 0/5, but if you can start swinging with Glunch, it gets pretty out of hand pretty quickly. And then at the beginning of your instep, you can just put 2 more +1/+1 counters. If you already put 2 with Miss Bumbleflower, that's 4 counters a turn. Another person draws a card, so you can proc your Sphinxes or your other draws. And then you can just create some treasure tokens, which is always nice. I usually go with the +1s on Glunch, but the treasure tokens are pretty nice too. We got Forgotten Ancient. This is going to be one of our big guys, our big boys. Whenever someone casts a spell, you put a +1 on them. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, if you feel like it, you can move all your counters from Forgotten Ancient onto Miss Bumbleflower and start swinging for some pretty crazy commander damage if you feel like it. So this Forgotten Ancient is pretty good. I enjoy playing him. And then we got, just a regular Hydra. He's got Trample. And whenever someone casts a spell, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then you got Sky Shark. Pretty simple. Whenever you draw a card, he gets a +1. And we have lots of ways to draw cards with Sky Shark. And then we have Chasm Skulker. That one's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. He's the same as Sky Shark. Whenever you draw a card, you put a +1. But whenever he dies, he creates a bunch of little squiddies. So the stronger he is, the more squids you get when he dies. He's really a good card to have that synergizes great with Miss Bumbleflower because she can buff him pretty quickly. Next up, you can't really have a good offense without a good defense. So I like putting Teferi's puzzle box in here because it really messes opponents' hands up. Like opponents could have their Wincon in their hand at any given time, but Teferi puzzle box is cycling their hands. It makes it hard for opponents to do the things that they want to do when they want to do them. So that's a pretty good defensive card in my book. And then we got Uba Mask. This makes it so all your cards go into the exile, and then whenever you draw them, but you can also play them from the exile that turn. And it really makes people slow down their decks. It makes people think before they play. And whenever you're making them draw multiple cards per turn, sometimes people won't have enough mana to cast all those cards. So Uba Mask is pretty good when it comes to that kind of stuff. We got Exhaustion. This is kind of just a funny card me and my friends run in our group. It's kind of just like a fuck you to one person. and I always get targeted by this, so I started running it too and started targeting everyone else with it. It's pretty fun to play. It's pretty funny to play. You can always replace this card with something better if you need to, but I just like playing it. It adds some diversity and really makes opponents second guess tapping out sometimes. And then you got Hushbringer. Basically, this brings all those ETB decks to a crawl, and usually Hushbringer doesn't last long on the field. People do not like this card being on the battleground, but it's pretty good. It slows people down, and we like Miss Bumbleflower very much benefits from a slower game sometimes, because some of the combos we're going to be doing are very expensive CMC wise, and sometimes you just got to hold down the fort until you get that 10, 12, 13 mana that you need just if you're trying to hold a counterspell. So, yeah. And then we got Draenith Magistrate. Makes it so our opponents can't cast spells. It really shuts down graveyard play, exile play, top of the deck play, stuff like that. We got Socrates. We already went through him, but he just tanks an attack and makes everyone draw. Pretty cool. I really like Socrates. And then we got the usual, just stacks cards in Blind Obedience. Makes it so your creatures, opponent's creatures and artifacts come in tapped. We got Crawl Space, so no more than 2 creatures can attack you at a time. We got Island Sanctuary, which is really stonks in this deck because you're going to be drawing with Miss Bumbleflower and all these other draw cards that you have. So it's really easy to skip a draw step and not take any damage that way. And then we got Silent Arbiter. Basically the same thing as Crawl Space. No more than 1 creature can attack you. And alright, after defense, we're going to get down to the cool stuff. Starting with our bread and butter combo is Mind Over Matter. Basically, this lets us discard a card and tap or untap an artifact, creature, or land. So what we're going to do with Mind Over Matter is we're going to use it with Temple Bell or Quain that says you can tap and each player can draw a card. And basically, whenever we tap our Temple Bells, we'll draw a card. We'll untap them with Mind Over Matter, and then we'll just keep doing that until we deck out. So obviously that goes into our deck out Wincons, which are, the typical Thassa Oracles, Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, and Laboratory Maniac. These cards are pretty much what we're going to be utilizing throughout the deck to win the game. We have a lot of deck out shenanigans in this deck, but Mind Over Matter is the easiest one, and it's usually my go-to win con for this deck, simply because it's so easy to execute. You get Mind Over Matter on the field, you get one of these guys on the field, and you can just deck yourself out. As long as you have enough mana to play Thassa's Oracles or Laboratory Maniac, whenever you draw into them, you can deck out. And it's just a good combo. But keep in mind, while you're doing this, your opponents are drawing cards too. And they could potentially draw into a Counterspell, a Killspell, stuff like that. So in order to prevent them from doing that, we got to play a little bit more negation, which is Kutzil. Kutzil makes it so your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, so that pretty much secures us the win if he's on the field. Narset makes it so each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn, which basically means you're decking yourself out and everybody else just draws 3 cards. Or if you're playing against 3 people, each person draws 1 card. So the odds of them having an answer in that 1 card is very slim. But we also have our boy Grand Abolisher. Everybody knows him. Same thing as Kutzil, but it counts for spells, artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So you get these guys on the field, and your bread and butter is pretty much set to win you the game. Alright, next combo we have is our evil combo. I like to call it evil because I only really play this combo if I'm playing against people I do not like. And I played against my friends once and they were not happy about it. So we're gonna start off with an Uba Mask, which basically states that you can only play cards from the exile, and every time you draw a card, it goes into exile. And then we play Drain this Magistrate. Makes it so your opponents can't spells from anywhere other than their hands. So now they can't. Every time they draw, they can't play whatever they draw. If you want to get even more dirty with it, you slap down a big old Windfall. Everybody discards their hand, draws a bunch of cards into their discard, and if they can't win the game with their board state, you can just slowly win the game and make them watch you win. Usually people scoop after the Windfall, but I think it's pretty funny making people watch you play the game and just slowly win the game, draw after draw. So that's why this one's called evil, because it kind of just shuts everyone out of the game. Alright, next up we have our Infinity combo, which is just Enter the Infinite plus whatever you want to use to win with Enter the Infinite. My go-to is Psychosis Crawler. If you have Psychosis Crawler on the field and you drop an Enter the Infinite, you just win the game because everyone loses 99 life. Unless you have an opponent that has 200 life or infinite life or something, that'd be crazy. And then we also have Thassa's Oracle. If you have enough mana to cast Enter the Infinite, you can cast Thassa's Oracle and pretty much win the game off of that. Alright, and then you got the basic deck out Wincons with Jace and Laboratory as well. So there's a bunch of different lines in this deck that you can take, and I think you're starting to, after this one, you'll start to see them. But yeah, this is the Infinity combo, or Enter the Infinite combo, whichever one you want to call it. Alright, next up is the Sun combo. This is a 2-card combo, which is just Approach of the Second Sun and Narset's Reversal. You drop Approach of Second Sun, you copy it with Narset Reversal, it goes back to your hand instead of back on top of your deck, and then you drop Approach of the Second Sun again. You need a lot of mana to do this. I think it's 6, 7, 14, 16 mana. So the odds of you actually playing this whole combo is pretty low, but casting Approach of the Second Sun, then Narset, just to get it back into your hand is also pretty good as well. Sometimes I just cast Approach of the Second Sun and put it on top of my deck, 7th from the top, because Miss Bumbleflower has a lot of card draw, and you can get to the 7th from the top pretty quickly if you have all the card draw that you need. Alright, next up is my Divorce Sphinx combo. So with Divorce Sphinx, first you gotta get married, right? So we drop Wedding Ring on one of our opponents, and basically what it says is if your opponent draws a card, you draw a card. If you draw a card, your opponent draws a card. And then we plop down a Consecrated Sphinx. Now, whenever your opponent draws a card, you draw 2 cards. Then whenever you draw 2 cards, your opponent draws a card. And that just keeps going and going until you deck yourself out. Be careful with this though. Once you trigger this combo, I don't think there's any more stacks effects, so you need to have one of your Wincons on the field that basically say you win once you deck out. Alright, next combo is our Shrieking Gnomes. This is one of the more crazy combos, a little complicated, a little convoluted, but it's fun if you get to pull it off. So first off, we want to drop an All-Tech Mat Weaver, and that basically lets you, whenever you cast a creature spell, you create a 1/1 gnome, or you can copy some treasure tokens if you have treasure tokens on the field. And basically what we're going to do with this is we're going to drop a Shrieking Drake. And Shrieking Drake is going to, whenever you play a Shrieking Drake, you can bounce him back to your hand if you hold the priority correctly. So in order to do this, though, we need infinite blue mana. And that's where our boy Intruding Alarm comes in. Creatures don't untap during your controller's untap steps, but our main focus is the second ability. Whenever a creature comes into play, untap all your creatures. Whenever you untap all your creatures, so basically every time Shrieking Drake comes into play, you untap all your creatures. So we can add our blue mana dorks into the equation. Blue Tender, Feyburrow Elder, Kami of the Whisper Hopes, Noble Hierarch, and that can pretty much guarantee us infinite blue mana every time Shrieking Drake comes in. And so we pretty much can cast infinite amount of gnomes. But that's not all we can do with the Shrieking Drake Intruder Alarm combo. You know who else has ETB effects? Our commander. You can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature every time. And whenever you cast a spell, a target opponent draws a card. So not only do you get +1+ infinite amount of +1/+1 counters on your commander, but you can deck every one out with this. Every opponent you can deck out with this card. So it's just a win-win. You can combo with Miss Bumbleflower, Shrieking Drake. I think there's a few more combos you can, or a few more cards that can pop off with Shrieking Drake entering the battlefield infinitely with Intruder Alarm. So that's the Shrieking Gnomes combo. Let's go to our next combo. This isn't really a combo. This is just a Wincon. We got Psychosis Crawler in here. And if you play Enter the Infinite with it on the field, you win the game. And then I like to use Teferi's Puzzle Box. And then if your opponent has 7 cards in your deck are in their hand, they take 7 damage every turn. It can get pretty brutal. But there's also a bunch of other ways to infinitely draw. So if you have Psychosis Crawler on the field, that's a very easy win con. Our next win cons are just Triskaidekaphile and 20-toed toad. Basically, they just have these weird win cons where if you have 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. 20-toed code is if you have 20 or more, you win the game. So these are just our go-to. Like these cards probably aren't going to stay on the field longer than a turn, but they're still pretty good cards, and they're a threat that the opponents have to get rid of if they don't want you to just straight up win the game. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole deck other than lands. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you guys think, what you guys would add, what you guys would remove, all that good stuff. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you guys in the next video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Trying to do something a little different, getting a little more fancy with it. And let me know if you guys like this kind of content, or I should just stick to the ASMRs. I have a very soft voice, so it's kind of hard for me to speak up sometimes. But hopefully you guys heard me, and hopefully I was a little more exciting in this one than the ASMRs. I really love this deck. It's my favorite deck, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. Give it a try, and let me know what you all think. Thank you, and have a good day.